Today we're going to teach you 2 new stitches in preparation for our paper project. We're going to teach you a running stitch, which looks like this, and a whip stitch, which looks like this, around your fabric. Today you're going to need a few materials. You're going to need to choose one of these pieces of paper. Actually, it's fabric, but it looks kind of like paper. You'll need one thread. It's all brown. You'll need one needle, one threader, which we call the taco boat, and then you'll be ready to go. We're going to be learning these stitches so that next week we can take your handmade paper, cut out 2 squares, put them together, and sew around the edges and on top to make a pocket. And we'll tell you more about this later. The first thing we need to do is get your thread through the eye of the needle. So the eye of the needle is just this hole on top, if you can see it right there. So we're going to take the thread and try to put it through our eye, which is kind of difficult if you don't have something to help with. So we're going to use this thing called a threader, which we call a taco boat because it looks kind of like a taco. We're going to stuff the taco with our embroidery thread by opening the taco and just laying it inside. Except we're not going to feed it all the way through. We're going to leave it closed like this so that you can't see the end of your thread. Now I'm going to take my taco with the thread inside and feed it through the eye of the needle. Now I can hold tightly to the other side and pull it through. Once I take the taco boat off, then you should have the eye of your needle threaded. I'm going to pull this through a little bit to where I have a short end and a long end. I don't know if you guys can see that. Short end, short tail, long tail. Now I'm going to tie a knot in the end of my string in the long tail. So if you guys remember to tie a knot, you go around your finger, around and over to where it makes an X or a scarf, and you'll take this tail and stick it underneath that first layer, like so. And then you can slip it off. And if you pull it tightly, you can kind of push your knot to the end, so that it's near the end of your embroidery thread. Now I'm ready to sew. So the first thing I'm going to do is fold my fabric over, like so. The first stitch that we're going to practice is the running stitch. So we folded our fabric in half. Now we're going to turn it to where it's a tall rectangle. And all we're going to do is go straight across the fabric using this running stitch. So I'm going to come up through the back, making sure I come through both pieces of the fabric. And I'm going to pull it all the way through till it stops. I can't pull it really hard or it'll jerk the knot through. So now I'm just going to have my needle act kind of like a dolphin would. It's going to go into the water and out of the water. So if you think about your fabric as the water, your dolphin's jumping out and then back in. And each time I go out of the fabric and back towards the bottom, I want to try to get these stitches the same width. So I'm going to go out and back in until I go all the way across my paper. I'm going to do this once, and then I'm going to do it one more time, trying to eliminate these spaces. So you'll see that in a second. Alright, I've made it to the end of my fabric, but I have all of this extra thread left, which seems kind of silly to waste. So what I'm going to do is rotate my fabric to where the tail of the embroidery thread is closest to my body. Now I can just go back this way. So since it's underneath, I have to start underneath. And this time I'm going to do a running stitch as far as I can with the thread I have left. But I'm going to try to leave these spaces really thin. So see how this space is much shorter than this space? So you can kind of see how those spaces are different. Like that. Alright, I ran out of thread, so I just did that stitch as far as I could before I ran out. And now I'm going to try the whip stitch. So I just threaded my needle again. If you need to remember how to do that, you can just rewind the video. The whip stitch is along the edges. So I'm going to start over here on this short edge. I'm going to come up through the back to start it off. And now I'm going to whip it around the fabric. That's why it's called a whip stitch. So instead of going in a straight line this way, it's going to go around the edge and up through the back. So this time you're coming up through the back every time. So you're coming around and up through the back. Around and up through the back. Am I pulling it tightly right here? Not really. If I pull it super tight, it's going to crunch that up, and I don't want my fabric to have a scrunched look. So I'm just going to keep going all the way around. So you can see it on the front and the back, how it goes around the edge.